Hi, welcome to KiwaniTalk. We're a public information show put together by people from the Dearborn Kiwanis Club, usually with help from students at Dearborn High. But since those lucky boys and girls are off for the summer, we're doing a remote location broadcast from my office. My name is Gary Gardner. I'm your host of the longest running cable access program in the entire world, KiwaniTalk. We're happy to be here, continuing our legacy of over 30 years. And today, we're talking politics because it is the middle of summer, it is election year, and to help us talk about politics in Dearborn in particular, we have a candidate for the Dearborn Mayor's office who is Nagi Almudhegi.
Yep, you got it.
Good to see you, Nagi.
Thank you so much,
Thanks
Gary.
for coming. So, you know, you're in politics, we'll talk about that, but, you know, you came from somewhere. Where did you grow up and how did you get to where you are?
Well, first of all, Gary, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you today, this
Very
evening.
welcome.
And so, as you said, my name is Nagi Almudhegi. I came actually in 1981. It was in the February of 1981. In fact, I came from Yemen, and I'll never forget, I was 6 years old, and as we were landing, going down to the landing strip, I saw the ground was covered, it was completely white. And I remember as a child, I was like, what in God's name is this white stuff? You know, coming from Yemen, obviously we didn't have anything, snow. So as soon as I landed, it was like love at first sight. I was like, man, I love this place. I love the snow. We started playing, and so over the years, I grew up near Salina Elementary, and graduated from there. And then I went to Fortson High School, and after Fortson, we graduated from the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, which I was very lucky. Well, maybe not so much luck, but through hard work, I actually graduated in the top 10% of my engineering class, which was a difficult endeavor, but yeah. And so over the years, I transitioned, you know, to working in the private sector, and I've been working basically for the last 30 years in various multinational companies, if you will. I worked in all kinds of companies, from the very startup companies to established companies like GM, which obviously is a multinational company. And I learned quite a bit working from all of these different companies and interacting with so many different people, so many different professions, so many different backgrounds. And as fate would have it, now I'm running for mayor of Dearborn.
You have family in Dearborn too?
Yes. Actually, funny story, Gary. So the company I worked for, this is back I started working in 2006, so almost like 20 years. And it's based out of North Carolina, okay? It's a global German company. And the funny thing is, as we would have our meetings, you know, and I would travel there, you know, once a month, and they would tell me, Nagi, what in God's name, what are you still doing up there in Michigan, man? Just move down here. And I said, yeah, you're right, but I'm sorry, man, it's family. You know, so I have I have 17 nephews and nieces here. And I'm just so close to them. And I told them, I'm sorry, guys, I can't move. Even though I had, you know, much better opportunities for promotion and advancement. But I said, I'm sorry, I have family here. And then the other thing is too, Gary, it's the fact that, I don't know, it's maybe because when I came at a very young age and I loved growing up in the South End and the friends and the relationships, you know, that I built over the years, it's just hard for me to see myself live anywhere else, to be honest, you know. It's just like, I just have this attachment, emotional attachment to Dearborn that it'll never go away.
Like you, I was born, you know, out of a different country. I was born south of the border in Windsor, and through various sundry moves overseas in Australia and then Chicago, we moved here when I was in 9th grade. So that was back in the late 1960s. That tells you how old I am. And Dearborn's always been home. I've lived overseas again. I've come back. I'm back. So Dearborn is home. And there's something about this city that really is, it feels like home.
Yeah.
And you have people you see that you know. And that is a reason that I live here. My wife and my 3 daughters were, you know, we lived here for 40 plus years as a family. So it's all good to have the family here. and my kids say, Dad, we walk, you know everybody in the town. That's what Dearborn's like, right?
Yeah, yeah. And the funny thing is, every once in a while, I will go back to the south. I still have, of course, relatives everywhere in Dearborn. And I was walking, this was a few weeks ago, and I saw a gentleman that I hadn't seen in like so long. And you know how when you haven't seen somebody for so long, but you like see the facial features, So I was expecting to just go into the store for like 5 minutes, buy something and leave. And he looked at me and I looked at him and I'm like, okay, wait a minute. I've seen you before, And we started talking and it turns out, yeah, we grew up together. I was in Holly. I lived at Holly. He lived at Rulo. And it's funny because we were talking for like 3 hours. And I hadn't seen him in like what, 35 years. And it felt like we were family, like you haven't seen somebody you've known for a long time, and when you see him, you just get that connection, that affection, and he and I, we had a great time. As I told you, like 3 hours, and we hugged each other, and we said, "Hey, listen, we're not gonna wait 35 years to see each other again," So no, it's a completely, it's like family, like I said, and it really, really is.
So one of the things about being a family and you want to take care of it is you want to be involved in the community. And obviously running for political office, and I've done it 6 times over different iterations of offices, but it's a big deal to run for office. What was it that made Nagi Almudhegi want to run for mayor for Dearborn?
By the way, before I answer that question, I just want to give you a shout out, Gary, for pronouncing my name correctly. When I was in high school, I had one of my counselors, God bless him, 4 years, my home school teacher, and he's the one that announces your name during graduation, right? So the entire 4 years, he could never pronounce my name. So I'm like, all right, graduation, okay, I'm sure he's going to at least get it right for graduation. And with my family, my dad, everybody is there, and we're, taking pictures and everything, and we have... So he gets to my name and he's like, Nagi Almudhegi. I'm like, oh my God, you couldn't even like once get it right. So kudos to you for getting it right. But it's actually an interesting story for me, Gary, why I entered politics. And for me, I would say I've followed politics, but not too much. I work. And then I like to play tennis, and I love to play tennis, by the way. And that's pretty much it. I'm a very private person. But for me, kind of my political awakening, Gary, it happened in 2020, probably a lot of people, because of the COVID. And what happened was, because we had our stay-at-home orders, so we were pretty much like locked up in our home. I mean, I don't know how long, it was weeks and weeks we were locked up. And finally, when the order was lifted, I was like, oh my God, thank God, we're free. And it was, I think it was like maybe in the June time frame or something like that. But the weather was phenomenal. It was a nice sunny day. And I'm like, all right, I called all my friends. I'm like, hey, let's go play tennis. And so we went to the park. And like I said, it reminded me like of the days when I was a child, when you're in school and then you get the first, nice day of spring and, you're in school, you're like, oh my God, I want to get out of the class. I want to go out there and play. So that's how we felt, like being so cooped up inside for so long. And we go and we started playing tennis. And all of a sudden, out of my peripheral vision, I see a police officer, walking down to the court. I'm like, okay, no issues. And he tells us, I'm sorry, guys, but we're going to have to shut it down. And I said, excuse me? He said, yeah, I'm sorry, we're going to have to shut it down. You're not allowed to play tennis because because of the social distancing and all of this nature. And I said, wait a minute, excuse me, sir, but if we were playing basketball, I understand, if you're, that's a contact sport, the virus, whatever. I said, okay, no problem. Makes sense. But we're playing tennis. We're like 100 feet apart. How are we going to transmit the virus? That's number one. And number two, I told him, I was like pretty frank with him. By the way, you can tell I'm a very direct, person, I said, I have diabetes, and I'm the one with the pre-existing condition, and it affects us the most. And he said, listen, I'm sorry, this is our orders, you cannot. I said, but I see people walking in the park, they're riding the bike. They said, yeah, that's an approved, you can ride the bike, you can walk, but you can't do any other sports. And my friend, who happened to be African American, we've been playing there for like 20 years, more than 20 years. When you get into those situations, Gary, your like blood pressure starts to go up, and I was like, I said, this is ridiculous. We live in the United States of America, and you mean to tell me I can't play tennis here? And I said, you know what, this is gonna be, and I was serious actually. I said, you know what, this is gonna be my Rosa Parks moment. I'm not leaving. You wanna come arrest me, go ahead and arrest me. And finally, Corey, my friend, he said, hey, listen, Naj, come on, man, it's not worth it, bro. You have a nice job, this and that. He's like, don't worry about it, man. Let's just leave. And so Gary, I reluctantly then ended up leaving. But that was the first inclination to me that something is not right in Dearborn. I was like, wait a second, our leadership don't have the common sense to allow people to play tennis when it's so clear. So that was the first thing. And then after that, we had the situation, if you recall, we had the brouhaha over the sexually explicit materials in the classroom. So that was the second incident. That was in 2022. Of course, as I said, this was kind of like a beginning, like alarm bells started ringing in my head. But I said, well, whatever, I'm not going to get involved. Let them do what they do. But then 22 rolled around, and I said, okay, guys, I read some of the material that was in the book, and I said, can you explain to me how this is going to benefit our children in school? I said, shouldn't we focus on math, history, problem solving, these kind of things? And the unfortunate part was I didn't realize, it was actually my first time that I ever spoke in public, was at Dearborn Public Schools. So I had no idea at the time. I thought we were going to have a conversation with the board, and I was told, no, you just have 3 minutes, you say your piece and then be done with it.
Did you try reading the stuff from the book and see what they said?
Yes, I did, and they were just silence, nothing. But then there were other activists from the other side. By the way, I went in there, Gary, this is the point I want to make to you and then to the viewers. I went like in good faith, like in a common sense way to try to understand, what's going on. And people from the other side, they looked at it as if I was some sort of right-wing fanatic trying to impose some ideology. In fact, I was called a religious bigot, an extremist, Taliban. They called me Taliban, and they called me white supremacist. And the worst part of it all, Gary, was they tried to get me fired from work. And this, then really the alarm bells really started ringing in my head. And I said to myself, okay, we've lived in Dearborn, this great country, this great city, all of my life. And I never harmed anyone. I never spoke ill of anybody. Even if you disagree with me, Gary, which you have the right to disagree with me, I have the right to disagree with you. I treat you with respect, you treat me with respect. But at the end of the day, even if you disagree with me, if the other side disagrees with me, you do not have the prerogative to try to get me fired. Like, ultimately, at least acknowledge the fact that I have freedom of speech. I can acknowledge my opinion and have a healthy debate. But no, they tried to get me fired, and in the future, maybe I will, explain like how all that went down. But for a moment, I was afraid I was actually going to lose my job, because they just kept calling the company, even though I never wore any company outfit. I did everything after work, and so on and so forth. Then we had in 2023, we had a situation that really, really shook me. And not just me, I mean a lot of people in the community. We had a gentleman by the name of Hassan, God rest his soul. He was shot at a restaurant in the parking lot. And I remember very clearly, like when I read the story, I was so upset, and I was like really upset and sad because he was shot in front of his fiancee in the parking lot, and they were about to get married, and it was because of his watch. You know, they wanted to steal his watch, and things escalated, and he was killed. And like I said, I'll never forget, I was so mad. I was sad and mad at the same time. But at the time, I thought it was in Dearborn Heights. So I was like, okay, you know, it's Dearborn Heights, you know, let them take care of it. Or like it didn't register in my head, Gary, like that it was in Dearborn. And then once I found out that it actually like happened right where we play tennis, close to where we play tennis. And that really shook me. And I said, you know what? And I started digging into things. And that's when I knew, like, we need a change at the leadership in Dearborn. And we need to have somebody in there who is an actual problem solver, who has some common sense, and who will do initiatives and who will pursue policies that benefit the residents of Dearborn, and not really be a part of any political class or be a part of a special interest group or whatever the case may be. Just focus on the residents and do what is common sense. So it's these kind of three things that kind of put it to the forefront.
We're going to pick up on this now that we know why Nagi is running for mayor. We're going to talk about some of the things that your vision for the city. But first, we have to take a bit of a break here. I'll get some words from Kiwanis. We'll resume our conversation with Nagi Almudhegi right after this break from Kiwanis. Don't go away. We'll continue. Welcome back to KiwaniTalk. I'm Gary Gardner, your host in this political season episode of KiwaniTalk with candidate for the mayor of Dearborn, Nagi Almudhegi. Welcome back. And so it's a big deal to be the mayor of a city with a huge budget, many population, a lot of issues. What are the things that you've identified as that you think you can handle and are critical for the future of our town?
So, I want to say this at the outset. So one of the things in life, and one of the things that you learn as you experience life and you work for many, many companies and you work with a lot of different people, it's something that I call, actually it's not that I call, it's called the Pareto principle, which is you work on the top issues that are affecting the community or affecting whatever the case may be. And just to give you an example, I want to give you an example, Gary, of some of the things that I would have done differently, for example, than the current mayor. And I'll just use one of the examples. So one of the examples is we spent $10 million on these so-called peace parks. I personally will call them the protest parks. In fact, if we're honest with each other, that's what is happening. So myself, if I were the mayor and we had $10 million for Parks and Recreation, as I said before, from my engineering background and the way I think and the way I analyze things from a methodical, systematic way, the question that I would be asking is, okay, what are our issues, the top issues that we're facing in Dearborn as it relates to Parks and Recreation? So when you ask yourself that question, Gary, is lack of parks one of the problems that we have in Dearborn? Like, we don't have enough parks? In my humble opinion, we have almost 50 parks. So we don't need necessarily 3 additional parks. So what I would have done, I would have asked my department to say, okay, I want you to visit all of the neighborhoods in Dearborn and find out from the people that live there, what do they need in their parks, their respective parks. And one of the things that I would have done, for example, was implement or build a pool at Hemlock Park. As an example, Hemlock does not have a pool. So that community is one of the most densely populated communities within Dearborn, and it doesn't have a pool. So I would have used the funds to create or build a pool for Hemlock Park. So that kind of just gives the viewers an idea of how my mind and how I operate. One of the examples.
one of the impetus for you was this tragic incident
Yes.
of the person in the park. What about police and fire protection? Where would you go there?
That's a great question, Gary, and that was what I was going to touch upon next. So, that incident, by the way, as I said, it really shook me, and because the gentleman Hassan, God rest his soul, he was a young, a youth, and who was just starting, his life, and for it to be taken away so brutally, just left an indelible mark, in me. So the question, when that happened, the question that came into my head was, what kind of person or people would have the temerity or have the audacity to commit such a crime? Okay? And unfortunately, these were career criminals that came from out of the city. And so my question then, the logical question is, why would people think, or why would someone from outside the city think, or have the audacity to think that they could potentially commit a heinous crime inside Dearborn? And that's what opened up my eyes to the policing. And it's unfortunate, but the current mayor that we have, he is of the persuasion that believes that the police department is racist, if you will. Me personally, I don't look at race when it comes to policing. I look at the results, and I look at, if you did the crime, you should do the time. So the current mayor, for example, in an interview with Politico, he said that, I can provide the reference later. He said that African Americans, for example, he said, are getting ticketed too much in Dearborn, as an example. And he said, we need to reduce that. And he said, well, we reduced it by 50%. And he was happy. This was in 2022, like in the latter part of 2022. He said, we did a great job. We told our police, do not focus on minor crimes because we're effectively targeting African Americans and blah, blah, blah. But the way I look at things, Gary, the way I look at things as an engineer and like from a common sense point of view, I don't look at it as you are white, you are black, you are green, yellow, whatever the case may be. I look at it as if you do the crime, you should do the time. So he comes from a background, like I said, of the police is I'm not going to say our enemy, but he is very, very different from my point of view. I believe that we need to support our police officers, and they need to know that we have their back, and I want them to do their job and to arrest and put people behind bars irrespective of what color they are. I don't care what color you are, black, white, brown, green. If you are coming into Dearborn and you want to harm our residents, then my philosophy is we need to be tough on crime. So I want to hire more police officers. That's number one. Number two, I want to have additional training if necessary for police officers. And number three, I want to make sure that the mayor and the administrators have the police officers back, because speaking to a lot of the people, the rank and file that are actually on the road, and they're the ones that are protecting us, I've been told that they're not happy with the administration or administrators because they're basically handcuffing them in terms of them doing their job. And to me, if you can't, Gary, I look at it very simple. As the mayor and people in the city, we really don't want much from our local government. We want to be kept safe. We want our streets to be clean, and then we want them to respond, if we have emergencies. So if we're not able to keep ourselves safe, our city safe, then what good is talking about, our plan for 2050, our plan for 2040, 2035. So to me, the basic criteria is keeping people safe. And right now, Gary, to be honest, people do not feel safe. In my own neighborhood, as I said, 17 years I've lived there. 17 years. I walk into the CVS, Gary, and everything is on lockdown. The soap is on lockdown, the shaving cream is on lockdown, the razors are on lockdown, the laundry detergent is on lockdown, batteries are on lockdown. I'm like, what's going on? Do we live in the United States of America, or where are we living? And to me, that is unacceptable.
Big issue. We got only about 3 or 4 minutes left. Is the sewer system and the backups and all that sort of stuff. As an engineer, any ideas for that?
That's another very good question. So here's the thing. By the way, my neighborhood and my house, it completely flooded 2 times. And I lost like in excess of $30,000. I know a neighbor of mine down the street was lost like $70,000. So from my point of view, and by the way, as far as I know, I haven't heard anything from the administration about the they had supposedly had a study that they were going to study our sewer system. So far, I haven't seen anything from the city. But to me, by the way, that is one of the biggest issues that the city needs to address. And in these last 4 years, I don't see it as being addressed. So from my point of view, I would work with the Army Corps of Engineers. I would work with Wayne County, the state, and making sure that we have the funding that we need. We have the experts that we need to fix what needs to be fixed. Now, to be candid with you, I don't know from an engineering perspective, I don't know exactly what happened, and that's why we're waiting for the report from the government, or from the city, excuse me. But again, my mentality is once we find out what the issue, what exactly happened, you then look at the Pareto principle and find out what's the cause, the top cause, and then you address them one by one by one by one. And always, Gary, my philosophy is I want to have the most effective, low-cost solution.
In order to get that in place, we get down to 2 minutes. You're running for mayor. Talk about your website, how people can get a hold of you. There wasn't a primary, wasn't enough people interested in running. So good and bad, you don't get to put your name out there. How can people reach your campaign, Nagi?
Absolutely. Thank you, Gary. Just a quick note. We did have actually 4 people, but 2 of them got disqualified for various reasons. Now, in terms of the website is mayornagi2025.com. So I encourage you to visit the website, and our phone number is there, and feel free to email me, call me. As I said before, I've been an engineer for 30 years. So one thing I want to just mention to the people and the viewers that are watching, I'm not a politician, so if I don't know the answer or if I don't have the answer, I'm not going to sugarcoat and lie to you and just come up with some mumbo jumbo. I will tell you. But here's the thing. In all of my 30 years of working for the companies, major international companies, I've saved companies tens of millions of dollars by using common sense solutions and then and solving complicated problems. And I want to use that same experience and that same talent to work for you, the residents of Dearborn, and nobody else.
When's the election?
The election is November 4th, 2025.
You going to be there at the polls?
Absolutely, 1,000%.
At every poll all day long?
Of course.
You're going to have volunteers?
Of course, from 7 to 8 p.m.
People want to volunteer to help you. What number do they call?
Go to mayornagi2025.com and then sign up in our sign-up sheet. There's a sign-up sheet right in there. As soon as you click on the website, you will just click there, and we will get a hold of you.
Well, full marks to you for jumping into a really big people, sometimes run for school board or city council. Nagi, full marks for running for mayor.
I appreciate it, Gary. Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you very
appreciate
much.
you.
November 4th, 2025 is the election. It's a off-year election for many people, but for Dearborn, it's a very, very important election. Get out there and preserve the rights, or you use the rights that have been given to us by our founders, by all those who have died to help us maintain our democracy, our republic. I'm Gary Gardner. See you at the polls November 4th. November 4th. Bye-bye.